I'm one of those homeless students that you hear about.
Been walking down this long and dusty road, carrying this huge and heavy load. Up ahead I can see my destination. Been dark but now I see illumination.
Make a video specifically. I wanted to start talking about my bio, I guess, for want of a better word. I just wanted to start saying this is who I am and this is what I stand for and this is why I'm in this way I am now. My very first video was why would a person want to live in an RV? It's a terrible video, and I didn't have a camper at the time. I bought this camper over just over 2 years ago, and I've been living in it full time for almost 19 months now. I keep saying 18 months. I've been saying 18 months for like 2 months, but really it's almost 19 months now. I've been thinking about this video for a while. I've been thinking about how to do it, what to say. I don't want to come off sounding like poor me or I'm begging for stuff or whatever. I'm working hard, trying to get my degree done. I live in my 1991 Toyota camper, full-time. I don't pay for camping, I can't afford it. I live on my Social Security disability check, and I am a full-time student. I'm 19 credits away from finishing my bachelor's degree in studio art, and I'm hoping next fall to go to a graduate school program. There's one that I'm excited about that's in St. Louis, Missouri. I raised 5 kids. I had 3 abusive husbands. One is in prison still, and I'm trying to make a better life. I'm 49 years old and I am on disability. I've been on disability since 2009. You know, I'm one of those homeless students that you hear about. My kids were, I still had my 2 youngest kids living with me then. My son has autism and he's also on disability, and so for a few years the 3 of us lived on his and my Social Security. We both get the smallest check. So it's not very much. It's not very much to live on, and we were on Section 8. I hesitate to say that it was a blessing because it's not. It's not really. When you're on these programs, they lock you in. For instance, okay, I was on Social Security disability because of my injuries and disabilities, and we were on Section 8, and we had, our rent was $74 a month on Section 8, and we were getting like $450 in food stamps. And back then, I was trying to figure out how to live on, well, before that, I was trying to, because there was a couple of years before that, before I got on my disability, that the only income that we had was $200 of tea. You know, because just because you aren't getting your Social Security check yet does not mean that you're not disabled. Spent many years, at least 5 years, trying to get on disability and sabotaging my efforts to get on disability by taking jobs here and there, which as soon as you took a job, they would say, oh, well, clearly you're not disabled because you have a job. And I would only be able to keep that job going between 3 and 6 months before I would become completely incapacitated, and then would spend weeks not being able to get out of bed. Sometimes at the end there, I remember at the end there, right before I got on my Social Security, right before we got on Section 8, we were living in this awful trailer. It was a 2-bedroom trailer, and so I thought, I lived in the, this is the way it was. I lived in the living room, and my daughter had a room, and my son had a room. Then there was also a kitchen area in the living room. My daughter's bedroom was, it was awful. It was so awful. Before we moved in, there was, there's a hole in the floor for the dryer vent. And before we moved in, there had been cats that had been climbing in through that hole, and they had set up a den in the room that I tried to make into my daughter's room. And there was literally, before we moved in, there was literally 6 inches deep poop, cat poop, on the floor in the closet. They had just set that up as their bathroom. And there was also, because it was so full, there was also poop around the room. They had started to move out into the rest of the room. And so I had gone, when I rented that trailer, I rented it because it was cheap enough. I could barely afford it, but I could afford it. And I rented that trailer at least 2 months, I think, before we were able to move into it, because it was so disgusting. And slept on a friend's couch while I was cleaning that trailer to make it livable. Well, I moved my daughter into that room, and very quickly it was apparent that wasn't going to work, so she couldn't stay in there. So she left her things in there, but she slept in the living room with me. And my son had his room right behind the living room, and we also had our desk and stuff in there. And I got so sick because I was working so hard I was working out of the house I had 2 different online self-employed jobs. One was I was doing bookkeeping for an online hardware store, and the other I was doing telemarketing through a VoIP. You probably don't know what that is. That's fine. It just means that I didn't have a telephone line. I would use the internet telephone. That was how I was paying the bills, and I was so sick. I was so sick, y'all. I didn't have the right kind of internet to do that job out of that trailer. So a friend of mine let me set up in her basement. So I brought a recliner into her basement and used her cable internet. And I had a tray that I would set across the recliner that I put my laptop on. And I was so sick that I would just put my feet up and just lay back in that recliner and just let, it was an auto dialer, and I would just talk to people from the recliner. And I was so sick I would fall asleep in the middle. I was on so many drugs for all the different illnesses that I had, and they had so many side effects, and I was so sick, and I would literally fall asleep in between calls. I think I fell asleep in the middle of calls sometimes. And it got so bad that I couldn't even do that anymore. And I had finally gotten the notice that I was going to get on Section 8, so I contacted my landlord and told him we had a Section 8 apartment that we were going to move into. That was a house, really. We had a Section 8 house we were going to move into, and I told him, I don't have enough money to pay this month's rent and get into that house. So I paid you a deposit. I put up with a lot from you with doing my own, bringing in people to do my own repairs. I had somebody that broke into our home in the middle of the night because, I mean, they didn't even break in. They just walked in because that was how bad the door was. It just didn't close properly and it didn't lock properly. And somebody just walked in one night. Anyway, I had contacted my landlord and told him I can't afford to pay this last month's rent and move into that house, and I got to get my kids out of here. And you know, this was a guy. He was a real estate agent. You know, he wasn't an old poor farmer dude that just owned some crappy. He was a out and out slumlord, the real deal slumlord. He owned a whole bunch of crappy, awful places just like that. And while he and his wife owned, you know, beautiful home, a beautiful second home, beautiful cars. I think they owned their own real estate agency that they were, I'm pretty sure they did, or she had anyway, because her name was on the real estate agency. You know, and their name was Cheatham in Malvern, Arkansas. I am not afraid to tell you that. Yeah, and he came into, I was so sick, y'all. I was laying in the bed. I could not get out of bed. Every time I got out of bed, I was so dizzy. I would almost fall over. My blood sugar was through the roof, and my blood pressure was so out of control. It was all side effects from all the drugs they kept giving me for everything. He came over, walked right in because the door didn't lock, and stood there yelling at me while I'm lying in bed, pretty much dying, yelling at me that he's going to evict me and that will ruin my chances to have a Section 8 house and I'd better pay him or else. So I got on Section 8. He didn't make good on any of his threats, and I was so sick I couldn't even yell back. I just lay there and cried while he yelled at me. Anyway, I did not pay him, and I moved into the Section 8 house. And so we moved in. Rent was like $74, like I said. I had to pay utilities, and you know, if you get your utilities shut off, then you can lose your house. Section 8 won't pay the rent if you don't have utilities turned on, even for a minute. I had to pay the utilities, and I had $74 in rent, and I had I was trying to take care of my kids, and it was rough. It was rough, y'all. It was a nice house though, and everybody kept telling me it was such a blessing, and I kept saying it's really not though. It's not though. And they didn't understand why I would say that, and I would say because I have to jump through all their hoops in order to keep it. And they're going to keep me down in order to keep it. And that's the truth. And if you've ever lived in a situation, you know that's the truth. My son had severe autism, and I was trying to get, I hadn't thought about doing it before because I thought children don't earn money, so what do they need a check for? And then I started to look into, you know, at the time when he was first diagnosed, there weren't any services. There were no services in Arkansas. And then he was older now, and he was getting on to be 11, 12 years old. And there were a few services, not much, but a few. And that's when I started learning about alternative treatments and, you know, doctors that could do different things to help him, and diets that he could do that would help him. And I thought, there's no way, how can I afford that? And so I thought, well, you know, that's what someone told me. That's why kids that are disabled get a check, so you can pay for those things. And I thought, oh, okay. So I applied, and he got on pretty easily. The second that his check started, My rent went from $74 a month to, I want to say I can't remember exactly, but it's $300 or $400. Food stamps went from $450, I think it was, down to $150. And I can't remember. You know, I'm probably saying the wrong numbers. I remember doing the math and figuring out that because he had a check, we had about $70 extra than we had before. Even though his check was 740 something. They took that back in food stamps and Section 8, and so you know, so you don't get anywhere. You can't get anywhere using these government systems. They made it that way on purpose. So you can't get out, and you can't get anywhere. So that's why I don't want to be part of those systems. So no, I never was able to afford to pay for any new therapies or anything. One thing that did improve, because I was able to spend cash money on food instead of only food stamps, was that I was able to start buying better food for him. Not in Malvern, because they didn't have any available in Malvern back then, but I could order food on like gluten-free and casein-free foods, and higher quality organic foods, coconut oil and things like that. I could buy them from, I used Vitacost and Swanson Vitamins, Amazon, but not very often, and Walmart.com. So that was an improvement, just because I had traded some food stamps for some cash, basically, and was able to get food of a higher quality from a better source at a better price. I have blog posts on an old blog, Bear Shirt, S-H-I-R-T, Bear Shirt, B-E-A-R-S-H-I-R-T, .blogspot.com is, I believe, what it is. I haven't really messed with that blog in a long time. That blog is about having a boy with autism, and the fact that I did a lot of posts about boys with autism being shot by police, and because they were having meltdowns, and the reason it was called Bear Shirt is because I had created a shirt that basically said, had my phone number on it, and said, if there's an issue, call me, and I put it on front and back. And I had the vaccine survivor logo that I came up with, and so that, I'm going to call that installment 1. I'm not going to go all the way back to my childhood, but I'm going to call that installment 1 for this video. Because why am I doing that? Why am I telling you these things? Well, I want you to know who I am, first of all, because I'm sharing my life on YouTube. Second, I'm sharing my life in video online, put it that way. And I'm trying to integrate all of the pieces of me into one thing, because I have the van life, and I have the artist, and I have the photographer, and I have the accountant, bookkeeper, tax preparer, and I have the domestic violence survivor, vaccine survivor, vaccine injured children, vaccine advocacy. I was keeping all these different facets separated, and of course I still have to have them separated to a certain degree, but I don't want to pretend like, I don't want to be on this video pretending like those things aren't part of my life. So I want if you choose to follow me on Facebook or on YouTube or library or whatever, Instagram, so I haven't been able to figure out how to integrate all these facets together before, and then I decided to just do it. So I am a full-time student. I am a homeless student. I am a van lifer. I am a Toyota RV owner. I am an artist. I'm a potter. I'm an advocate for autism, an advocate for vaccine injury. I have 5 vaccine injured children plus myself. I am a domestic violence survivor and a sexual assault survivor. And I am an empty nester, and I am disabled. And I want to talk about all these things on my channel and anything that I forgot to list just now. So that's me. That's going to be my new direction on this channel. And I hope that you'll come along with me for this ride. So
Oh, when I get there, I'm gonna put my problems down. Carry them so long, not sure that I know how. When I get there, I'm gonna put my problems down.